Okay, well, let's get rolling. So firstly, I just want to thank all of you for joining us for today's iFactoryEd webinar, WordPress for Higher Ed Websites. I am Lori Loturco. I'm your organizer for today and the marketing manager here at iFactory. So just to give you sort of the nutshell version of who iFactory is and what we do. We are based in Boston, and we're an interactive design and development firm with about 20 years of experience. We're a division of RDW Group, which is a full-service communications agency based in Rhode Island. So with higher ed being one of our core verticals, we work with schools of all shapes and sizes across the country to discover the best and most unique solutions for those organizations. And that's as far as web and mobile goes. So we have an incredible team of experts offering everything from discovery to usability, testing, through to information architecture, design, and development. So if you are looking to find out a little bit more about who we are and what we do, I recommend and invite you to, it's a little delay on the slide here. Here we go. I recommend that you check us out over on the web at iFactory.com, or you can visit our fabulous blog at interactivity.ifactory.com. And of course, across social media, you can typically find us as iFactory Boston, and on LinkedIn, it's just iFactory. So through these platforms, you can learn a lot about upcoming iFactoryEd webinars, and many of which are geared towards higher education. So today's presentation should be roughly 25 minutes in length, after which Lisa will lead a Q&A session in which we can respond to any questions that you might have about today's presentation. So we just ask that you use the chat box on the GoToWebinar interface to submit any questions you might have throughout the duration of the webinar. And likewise, use that same means if you have any audio or visual issues. Certainly let us know about those. And you can send anything over to myself, the organizer, or to Lisa and Zach, your panelists. So, without further ado, your presenters for today are Zach from Plymouth State University and Lisa, who is from Team iFactory here in Boston. And Zach will first take you through the Plymouth State case study. And like I said, Lisa will follow up and lead us in a Q&A session. So without further ado, I will hand over control to Zach.
All right. Are you able to see my screen there, Laurie?
I sure can.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. I'm going to take you through, and actually that probably didn't go full screen in the way that I expected, did it? Which screen are you seeing right now? Is that right?
Oh, there we go. Got it.
Okay. Sorry about that little glitch. So I'm Zach Tirrell. I'm from Plymouth State University, and Plymouth State is, we're a fairly small school, and not everybody's necessarily going to be familiar with us. So I just wanted to give a brief overview of who we are. We are located in Plymouth, New Hampshire, which is right at the base of the White Mountains in fairly northern population-wise in New Hampshire, but geographically pretty much dead center in the state. The population of Plymouth is approximately 6,600 people, so it's a small town. Our graduate and undergraduate populations are pretty close to the number of actual people in town. So it's an interesting community where it surges when the students are here, and then things slow right down like they are right now while everyone's gone for spring break. But we have small class sizes, usually 20, 30 at the most, a few larger classes, but mostly small classes. As part of that, we have a very tight-knit and collaborative community, both between students themselves, students and faculty and staff, and so that's part of the environment that really makes Plymouth State unique. It makes our web presence and what's going on campus really important. And so that's just a little bit about us. Before we had WordPress at Plymouth State University, we had a commercial CMS product that we had implemented in 2006. It's one of those not shining stories of CMS implementations. We realized we had a lot of content in the mid-2000s, and we selected a CMS. At the time, we really thought it was the right solution, but the deployment took a very long time. It was very cumbersome, and it took more effort than I think any of us expected, really, to get our content standardized and into this new CMS structure. Part of that frustration that we found with the CMS we had selected was, while it seemed relatively intuitive to the folks that went through the selection process, and we saw the user interface of it, and it seemed reasonable. What we have is a lot of distributed authors on our campus, which I'm sure a lot of you see as well, and they may be making one update a month or a few updates a year, and when they would go in to do their updates, they would find that they didn't really know the interface as well as they should. They weren't entirely certain how to get their content published to the site. So we had this cycle that was frustrating of regularly retraining our authors and sending our public relations staff out to help people, sometimes the same person year after year, to do that one or two edits that they were doing, or just the turnover aspect of when someone new would come online or an office would kind of deem someone their web author. That constant retraining was something that we really hoped to get away from. The CMS we had wasn't extraordinarily flexible. It was a closed source, not real extensible solution that we had a little bit of desire to do things beyond what that framework and what that structure allowed. And one of those things was some social integration. We hoped to be able to use some comments. We hoped to be able to use some integrated Twitter, or we're using SmugMug for some image handling. So we wanted to be able to present images that we were maybe storing in a social networking service and be able to easily embed those or drop those right into our CMS. And that really wasn't easy to do at the time. We also do a lot of custom code with PHP and JavaScript from our developer group that public relations really wanted to be able to use and leverage for various purposes on the front-facing website. And those were done with JavaScript and PHP, and when we would try to put those into the CMS, it was sometimes cumbersome, or it would malform the code, and it was really not very easy to get that embedded code in place and then not have it get broken, especially, again, for the folks who aren't making changes regularly. Another piece we really struggled with was image management. We wanted an ability to easily upload an image and not have to have an administrative assistant in a department necessarily know that image needed to be rescaled for the web, or that 7-megapixel image they took off their camera needed to actually be scaled down and not just dropped into some content and lightly rescaled. And the CMS just didn't handle that particularly well. The final concern that we had was about the size of the user community that we were working with. The CMS product we had was a higher ed focused product. There were probably, 200 institutions that were running it. And while that was probably good for a higher ed community, we were seeing things going on the web in general beyond just higher education that was exciting to us and that we wanted to be able to take advantage of. And that user community wasn't as active or engaged and as forward-thinking as maybe we would see out of maybe an open source product or a broader tool set. So that had us looking around for possible solutions, and we landed on WordPress, and that's a real good question. So why would we select WordPress? Why choose this open source product that's frequently thought of really more as a blogging engine than a CMS? And so at the time, we had WordPress already in use at Plymouth State. We were using it for student, faculty, alumni blogs. We were allowing people to do that both in courses and beyond, and a few student organizations who are doing that stuff as well. We also had a few internal sites that were using WordPress. They were experimenting with it, not front-facing things. And our library, our public front-facing and internally augmented library website was using WordPress really heavily, and they were seeing great success with it. We were seeing a lot of really good content generation and editing coming out of that library. So those things made it exciting. Because of some of that, the staff, both in our public relations office and in information technology, had good experience with using WordPress. We knew how to make it do some interesting things. And there was some excitement and real interest in this product versus the current product we were using. So that all coupled to why, internally we really wanted, and then the final bullet here is that instead of that smaller higher ed only focused user community, we could step into a much broader, much more diverse user community. And this meant we had a much broader array of plugins to look at to augment some of our functionality. We had other people to bounce ideas off of if we wanted to do something. We also figured with that massive user community, we were going to see faster iterations to that WordPress product, and it would stay much fresher and much more current. So not wanting to jump into this with both feet and take the institution on this wild right-hand turn, we started with a pilot of the College of Graduate Studies website in April of 2009. They approached us. They had contracted to get a redesign and a re-architecture of their website, and they initially were going to use the CMS we were using at the time. We talked them into being a pilot of WordPress, and they were hesitant at first. It took some meetings and some convincing to say, we think we can do this, and we think you'll be happier. So we convinced them, and they decided to roll that out in June of 2009. And their initial plan was to do a slow transition, moving some of their content across, and then as we selected grad and we had some success with them, we were going to slowly transition the rest of the websites. In 2010, in the summer of 2010, we decided that that was really taking too long. We were starting to see some kind of fractured look and feel on our front-facing website, and we committed to doing a full transition in the summer of 2010. And just a year later, we had completed and moved all of our content and everything we had done over to WordPress in that year. The exciting part about that is we were able to do that full transition to WordPress in a year when we hadn't fully deployed the prior CMS in over 3 years. So we really found some more momentum. We found a lot more excitement, and we really got it moving. I'm going to break out a PowerPoint for just a half a second and show you the College of Graduate Studies website, because it's actually really similar to now as it was even back then. So you should be seeing that. So this is our College of Graduate Studies website, and this is a fully WordPress based site. One of the concerns that they had early on was would it look like WordPress? Would it look like a blog? And I think one of the things we were able to prove to them and show them is that it didn't have to. We could use WordPress widget areas and things like that to really make it feel like a modern website and match the design that they wanted to use. And you can see, we drill in, we keep a similar look and feel. It acts, like you'd expect a website to act. So pop back to PowerPoint again. Okay. So we did a couple different pieces. Initially, we didn't make any changes to the front-facing public website as we started this process. So we started to convert to WordPress other than the graduate studies, which had a redesign, we left the rest of the site exactly as it was, and we got completely converted. And actually, I'm gonna jump back out to the browser again and just show you what that looks like. This is what our website looked like in the summer of 2010 when we really started to commit to it. There are a number of things that in retrospect and even at the time we found fairly distasteful about this design. But this is what we had at the time, and we converted this and all the underlying content. We contracted with iFactory actually in that fall, and we did that first website redesign, which looked like this. And this was the first website redesign that we did that was the front-facing public website on WordPress. So this is that. And then finally, this was actually a sprint redesign we did just to kind of get the cobwebs of the old wiped away and move to the new, to try to get some momentum and excitement from the campus. And we did, and we had a lot of people come and engage with us and have some great conversations, and we did a broader deployment, and our current front-facing website looks like this. So this is our WordPress-based site, and again, I'll just I'll drill in one level to show this is basically what it looks like. This is a fairly typical page. One of the things that we get really excited about and assists with that training aspect a great deal is if you're logged in and authenticated to WordPress, you see this bar that I'm seeing across the top. The additional thing you see is if you're someone like myself who has the ability to edit this specific page, we get that edit link right in line. The general public's not seeing this edit link, but I am because I have access to edit this page. So I can hit that edit link. It drops me into WordPress. I have a reasonably simple editor interface so that I can maintain that content, maybe remove a typo, maybe update a date or something that's changed. Simply hit update, and it's live on the site. So that immediately reduced a lot of the training. There wasn't as much, how do I navigate the CMS to find the page that I need to edit? How does that page in the CMS map to the page on the website? Instead, we could tell people, okay, you log into WordPress, and then any site that you travel to, if you have privileges to edit it, well, that edit link will be right there for you. And so that's been very exciting, and has really, really significantly reduced the amount of training. We're actually not hosting any regular training sessions anymore. We're really just doing an on-demand kind of training as people need it. We'll do a quick once-over with a new site editor if we launch a new site or work with someone on a major redesign. But we're not doing real formal regular training anymore, and that's been a great benefit to us. Okay, some things to be aware of when you're using WordPress. Our other CMS used a publish model where you would edit your content in the CMS, and then you would publish that content to live, and that content on the web server was actually static HTML pages that were being published or updated through the CMS. But when someone actually loaded them from their browser, they were just static pages. Where now each of those WordPress pages is live, and that may seem like a small distinction to some people, but for the technical folks in the audience, that means that instead of your web server just serving up static pages, now you have to make sure your back-end connectivity to your database is good and up and performing well, and there's a much bigger IT presence in serving WordPress instead of serving just a conventional CMS. From an IT standpoint, we loved the conventional CMS because we could patch it in the middle of the day. We only had to notify our website editors. It didn't actually affect the public website. Now, if we want to patch WordPress, we have to schedule that in the wee hours of the morning and make sure we're doing those upgrades off window, off hours. Another thing is that WordPress does require regular maintenance. There's patches, there's upgrades. The plugins in WordPress themselves have patches and upgrades. So getting that faster churn and the quicker patch process that we really desired does actually impact us in that now we're performing more regular maintenance. So there's some more time with that. Another piece that we actually weren't using in our prior CMS, but it had the capability of, and a lot of folks would be really interested in, is the workflow aspects. It's very limited in WordPress. You can't build out real complicated workflows and approval processes to approve a piece of content. That works pretty well for us. Going back to that small and tight-knit community, we have no problem kind of policing that stuff and talking to people who are doing things wrong instead of being extraordinarily overbearing, and being up front. So that's it's not a compatibility issue for us, but it may be for some, and something definitely to consider. Issues with the project. Initially we had some hesitant project endorsement, and so coming out of the gate, it took us a little bit longer to get steam, both on the original CMS and on this specific project. But once we got real strong project endorsement, once our executive steering committee for information systems was bought into it, we moved very quickly, and we were able to handle that. We had some real issues with partial deployment, like I mentioned, with having the College of Graduate Studies website on WordPress and some of the other websites still on the old CMS, and then making that transition. We needed to be able to serve up components of our website from static content from the old system, while simultaneously serving up new content through WordPress while we transitioned, so that we wouldn't have to just kind of flick a switch and have it all be over. That being said, it was still pretty successful once we got that momentum. Pound and Varnish are two open source proxying server technologies that we leverage really heavily. I'm not going to go into great detail about those unless anybody at the end wants to discuss them. But for an IT person in the room who's scratching their head about how to accomplish partial deployment, those are the technologies we use to make that happen. We also had some major employee turnover during this project. I'd like to think, and I think I'm right, that it had nothing to do with the transition itself, but just interesting timing. We brought a web administrator on, well, actually, slightly after we chose to make this transition, that web administrator left for a different opportunity. She was very supportive of the project, but she left. The new person we brought on, he was brought on by a director of PR who was really excited about this, and then the director of PR left, and so that person lost some things. And on, we ended up with a lot of just real complicated employee turnover in key stakeholder positions. I think we can credit about 9 or 10 of those over the course of the 2 years that we were actively making this transition. So the reason we were successful really is because there was 1 or 2 people who were here from the beginning that kept an eye on the prize. We had reasonable project documentation at the beginning. So we ended up being successful, but there's always some risk when you're doing a multi-year project like that you don't lose all the people who know things. Some quick issues with WordPress specifically. There's not a real easy way to take content that's in development and in like a development instance and then publish that to production. That's always a little hoop that we have to jump through. When you're making small edits in production and publishing them straight to the website, those are easy. It's those broad or large things where you want to kind of store up a site or build something kind of in the wings and then push it to live. That's a little bit complicated. We're still struggling with how to do that effectively. Installation and maintenance. Initially we did not install WordPress in a way that made it super easy for us to do installs and upgrades. We've struggled through that. We now have a pretty good system, but that took some learning curve to it. There was a real impression on campus about, is WordPress a CMS or is it a blog? And that kind of debate still occasionally comes out in people saying, oh, well, we can't do this in a theme, or we can't do this in a style because WordPress can't do that. But most of the time it can, and there's an education and a real working with our community to make sure that they think of WordPress as a CMS and stop thinking of it purely as a blog. The last thing is you have to learn it. You have to have staff who know it and are comfortable working in it and put in the time to really become competent WordPress administrators, plugin creators, theme developers, those sorts of things. I highly encourage the word camps that are held nationally. They do them in small local cities, and they're very good. They'll introduce you to a community of people who are doing similar stuff, and we've had great success. We've attended 2 of them in Boston and a couple of them in San Francisco, and we've really learned a lot from word camps. So some quick stuff. The good of WordPress, it's really easy for content. We don't struggle with folks knowing how to edit, how to maintain their content. There's a diverse available set of plugins. If someone says, hey, we really want to be able to easily embed video from YouTube, that's easy to do. There's either plugins to do it or native functionality. If people want to, I don't know, push their content from posts to be tweets on Twitter, there's plugins for that. So in general, almost every idea that someone has or some sort of integration point, there's usually a plugin that we can go and find and implement or tweak to really use for our benefits. WordPress itself as a product is regularly updated. There's always changes coming to that, and it moves forward. It's an extraordinarily flexible platform. There's so much that can be done with it, and so much that it has for flexibility. Between the plugin structure, the theming structure, some of the APIs that exist, and then the fact that it is, in the end, it's open source code. So if you have to dig in, that's a possibility. Which leads us to that next slide, talking about open source. It's Linux, Apache, MySQL, PHP. That's the LAMP platform. That's where it likes to run, and it does a great job there. If you have that sort of platform in your environment, it's a nice match for you and your folks. It's really nice to be able to see the WordPress code. My team is primarily PHP developers, so they don't have much concern or much issue with going in and finding the problem and debugging what might be happening. The one kind of negative side effect to that is we do always need to be very, very aware and very careful around making core modifications to WordPress. Those are bad. They're hard to maintain. It's almost like a snowball. Making core mods is something you want to avoid. We have had some great success with contributing modifications back to the code base and then seeing those turn around as baseline features, and that's a much nicer way to approach things. However, anytime you can do it with plugins, themes, widgets, that sort of stuff that WordPress has around the edges to make it highly extensible, if you can learn those pieces and do it through those pieces, then it's really easy. So just quickly, some things that we're doing next with our WordPress environment. We just launched the phase 2 of our site, fairly recently. We're looking to make a better split between our development and production world and try to build out a nice way to build something in dev and push it to prod. We've got some interesting stuff around the sheer number of subsites that we have and being able to manage who has authorization to do what on what subsite, and then being able to audit that in a reasonable way. I'm not sure that a lot of people are doing the scale quite in the same way that we are, with as many subsites and as diverse a population of authors and overlap between sites. So that's something we're struggling with. I think there's some great solutions that we'll be deploying, but these are kind of good problems to have. They're problems of kind of phase 2. We've got people in there, they're excited about using it, they're creating content, and now we're just trying to figure out how can we run around and do our jobs in the background better, so that there's not as many rough edges on that kind of stuff. So that's really the 25-minute overview that I have of where we're at with WordPress, what we're doing with the product, and I'm sure some folks have questions, and I know that me and others would be happy to answer those.
Zach, that was awesome. Thank you so much for that that just really thorough discussion of your website. I think that was a really great view of like why you chose WordPress and how it worked out for Plymouth State. That was awesome.
Oh, you're welcome.
We had a question that came in while you were talking, and it's an interesting one. It's about creating a mobile site with WordPress. The attender said, "I see there isn't a huge selection of mobile themes that are flexible, and do you have any suggestions?"
Yeah, that's actually that's wonderful. We're really having interesting discussions about mobile right now on campus, and I think one of the things that we're seeing is we could apply maybe a mobile theme to the website, but we want to approach it in a careful way. A lot of us have discussed the fact that if we just put a mobile theme on everything and automatically force that on everyone, do we want to tailor our content to mobile? Do we want to present different content to mobile? Do we want to do maybe more of the responsive web design thing, where the size of the person's viewport or the device that they're rendering it from might change the CSS and the JavaScript to present the content slightly differently? You'd still get a full website, but presented maybe in a more optimized way. We're also looking at a full standalone mobile application development and looking at how can we use WordPress to publish content into that may be structured differently. People aren't doing quite as much long-form reading on maybe an iPhone or an Android small screen device. Maybe they're doing more long-form on maybe the tablet-style devices. So we're taking a very careful step into that. I think WordPress is going to be a great enabler of that, but there's just still a lot of debate internally about the right way to do that through responsive design, through a full-on mobile theme, through just targeted content published into mobile applications. And we're going to have to figure that out, but we're playing with it right now.
It's funny to hear you phrased it that way, because that's something that we're very much thinking about at iFactory now, and we have a few responsive projects we're working on, and it's such a complex set of planning that you have to do to think about how every page on the site is going to respond to the change in screen size. It really kind of takes the site plan and puts it into a whole nother dimension of complexity.
Yeah, as web developers, we used to think it was hard to target multiple browsers, but now this whole multiple screen sizes, multiple it's become much more complicated.
We have a few more questions. One is concerning multi-sites, and at Plymouth State, do you use multi-sites? And if so, how do you structure your installations and sites?
Yes, we're heavily multi-site. Actually, every path that you see, and I'll just poke around a little bit in the website, but you can see if we look at the URL here, we're in www.plymouth.edu/office/Frost. This is the Frost Schools site specifically, and it's different, and it's like if we're using WordPress multi-site. It's a full standalone site that's different than now I've clicked into the admissions site. So www.plymouth.edu/admissions is an entirely different WordPress site, and you can actually, if I just mouse over my browser or my WordPress bar that's showing up at the top because I'm logged in, you can see now I'm an administrator and I'm not explicitly mentioned in most sites, but you can see that there are currently 5 explicitly mentioned sites that I'm a manager of, and those are all, like every single site we do, the student life site is a separate WordPress multi-site. And the reason we do that is it allows us to be a lot more capable of handling the permissions. It lets us be more granular on that. It also allows us to do that thing where we're developing a site and then we need to put it into production, or maybe we need to turn it off or on at a given moment. The multi-site really helps us to manage each of those sub-sites as like a completely standalone WordPress instance, but they're getting similar theming applied to them.
So they all share the same WordPress code base and the same set of plugin code.
That's absolutely right. Although, a given subsite might request or ask for a special plugin that we only turn on for that one subsite, and we don't have to turn on for everybody. Or maybe we do turn it on for everybody. We have that kind of option.
Have you ever found yourself in a situation where one of your subsites needed a different version of a plugin? Have there ever been kind of conflicts between the code you wish you could use for one subsite or another?
We haven't run into that. Maybe that's just luck, but no, we haven't run into that. In general, we try to push people to the latest versions of the plugins and help people to move forward, but that may be one of those things we're going to run into down the road here as we get more and more mature.
Is for your IT staff keeping track of the different multi-sites and who has permissions for what, is that a headache, or is that do you find that pretty smooth to manage?
The who has permissions for what part and the kind of building some audit reporting around that is one of the challenges that I think we're going to need to deal with here pretty soon. It's functional at the moment. It's gonna get out of control, and we are going to be developing some reports to try to get at the what's going on in permissioning and making sure that that's all audited.
And you have a custom authentication system that you're using there, am I correct? Like
yeah, we're doing an interesting thing. We actually, beyond, I was really talking more about WordPress as a CMS here, but we're using WordPress much more broadly than that. We're actually using WordPress as the framework for our internal student, alumni, admissions portal. Our My Plymouth interface is actually all kind of at the core is using WordPress. So one of the things that happens, and if I just go to our my.plymouth.edu, well, and actually I'm logged in, so that makes it slightly less interesting, but let me quickly log out here. This login page that we're looking at, again, if we look at my URL bar, you can see that it's wplogin.php. This login page for our institutional portal is actually the login page to WordPress. And this benefits us in a couple different ways. One, we can use the extensibility of WordPress to make WordPress authenticate against our Active Directory. We can have it set up some standardized single sign-on methodologies like CAS, which we use pretty heavily. And then once you get in, and I logged out. Let me get logged in here. Once you log in, we're into a custom PSU application, but because you're authenticated with WordPress, helps to facilitate what I talked about earlier, where most people are logging into our portal regularly. So now, if you're out on, let's say, the Museum of the White Mountains website, which is actually using a different theme, and so I chose that intentionally, you'll still see those edit links, and you still see that WordPress bar along the top because I'm logged into my Plymouth, and of course I'm going to be, in turn, then logged into WordPress. It also helps then when someone says, hey, I want to become an editor on a site. Well, we don't have to create a WordPress account for them. Everyone has a WordPress account, and we just grant them access to a given site. Makes a lot of that.
That is a really full-featured use of WordPress. That's very impressive.
Yeah, it's a little over the top sometimes. It's almost a little silly how much we're using it all over the place, but it delivers so much features and functionality. I sometimes feel like I'm an ad for WordPress, but sometimes we'll get requests for things, and it's almost the running joke internally. Oh, of course, we'll just do that in WordPress. And it doesn't matter what the request is. We just kind of start there.
So here's a question looking at it from a different angle. How do you evaluate which plugins to install? Do you wind up adding new ones frequently, or do you pretty much stay with the same set?
That's a tough question. We haven't had a lot lately. Early on, when we first started this, it was like gold rush season or something. I mean, the people were coming out of the woodwork asking for plugins, but it's really kind of settled down now. We have I don't know, probably 20 or so plugins in place, and I think it's been probably 6 months since anybody's requested one. Basically, the process we use is a site editor wants to use a plugin. We'll evaluate, maybe we already have that plugin, we just haven't presented it to them. If that's the case, then IT has a quick discussion with PR to determine if it's appropriate for them to have it, either whether we have it or if it's new. If we already have it and PR and IT think it's fine, then we just turn it on for them. If we don't have it, then we'll get it installed in our development environment. We'll do a little bit of testing with it. We'll make sure that it's going to work. And then from there, again, we'll go back to PR, make sure our public relations office is fully on board with it, and then often we'll enable that plugin just for that single site, unless there's a real good kind of global reason that other people are interested in it.
Tell us a little bit about comments on your site. Do you, I think comments are enabled.
And yeah, it's on a site-by-site basis, and site editors can even turn it off on a given post. If they want comments generally on their site, but then they don't want it on a specific page or post, they can turn that off, or so they can either do it globally or post by post. One of the areas where I can quickly show that we're doing comments on our iSarena webpage, they have this contact page where they've got contact information for the various folks who work there, and the various different programs that go on through there. Below, you can see that some folks have asked their questions right here in the comments, and then our iSarena staff will respond right to them here in line. We've had some discussions. Not everybody's using comments. Some people are using it better than others. One of the things we try to get the iSarena to do, and there's another page I think with adult men's hockey or something like that, but we'll get them to try to think about when the comment comes in, is this a comment that they should just respond to and then not publish out to their site because everything gets held for moderation? Is it a comment where, well, they really need to just edit something on their site because there's a typo or there's something wrong, and then the comment's not super useful to publish publicly? Or is it really a good discussion that they can just approve the comment, respond to the comment, and have that content right there, and maybe it'll help the next person? It's fluid. It changes. It's dependent on who the site manager is, but I think they're helpful, and I think they do help with engagement on some of this stuff.
And is it mandatory that everybody who turns comments on subjects them to a moderation queue, or is that an option for a subsite?
It's all, we try to be flexible. It's all optional. I don't believe there's anybody doing unmoderated comments on the site just because of the fear of the spam aspect of that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But, that's another thing that's really great. WordPress has I think it's called a Kismet, which is a really great way for managing comment spam, and it does a pretty good job.
Yeah, I was going to ask if you found that that's filtering out the spam for you pretty well.
It definitely is. It also helps that we don't have that many pages with comments on anyway, so it's not like we have a lot of crawlers that are constantly hitting us and trying to deal with all of our spam, trying to insert their spam into our world.
Now, one of the things you talked about was your learning curve about installation and maintenance, and that you said that you've come up with a good workflow now. I'd really love to hear you describe basically what your lessons learned are, so we can all learn from them.
Yeah, maybe a somewhat technical topic, but one of the things we were doing early on is we were just going out to WordPress, grabbing the zip file, dropping it on the file system, extracting it, and going through that very standard process for installation. That was fine, but then we had to kind of rinse and repeat and sometimes forklift certain components every time we wanted to do that. Now we're using the version control repositories, and we actually take the branch of WordPress that we want to go to, whatever latest is, or whatever that target version is, and we'll pull that into our own version control repository so that we can do the appropriate diffs and make sure all the plugins are up to date and do all of that kind of code management piece. And then we can deploy that checkout onto our dev server and make sure everything's working. And maybe we have to make some tweaks to what we're doing, edit our own plugins, do this or that, and make it right. And then when we go code base-wise, when we go from dev to production, it's merely going into production and telling the file system to update to the latest version from our Plymouth State code repository, which already has the latest version of WordPress merged into it.
Are you using, what version control system are you using?
We're using Subversion currently.
Was that a pretty big learning curve for your IT team, or was everybody comfortable with that already?
We've been using Subversion very heavily anyway. We were running all of our code in our IT group through Subversion. So that wasn't a huge learning curve. It was a little bit of a learning curve to get comfortable with how to play the game with WordPress. We could just update production to the latest core base WordPress code through Subversion, but we needed to be able to merge our own stuff in. So we really needed to put that kind of two-step process in, which has worked pretty good.
How do you handle when you're testing out configuration on the development server and you basically need to make the matching changes on production? Is that a manual process?
Yeah, that's one of the things that we're not happy with.
Yeah.
And we're currently looking at a couple of plugins that are supposed to make it easy to clone configuration changes from dev to production. And we haven't done that yet, but it's something that we're going to it's a goal for the next year.
Yeah, that is just a big problem with any CMS that has so much configuration in the database. And I think lots of people have tried to crack it for various CMSs, but I don't know anywhere it's not a bit of a headache.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to say that everything's roses, rainbows, and things, but there are some rough points like that.
So one of the things I was interested about, particularly when you were showing us your custom portal, is that you're doing quite a bit of customization, basically tailoring content per user role.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about how you implement that?
Yeah, so what we can do is, and it sort of gets beyond kind of the WordPress topic, but it's still, I think, interesting, is once we authenticate people through WordPress, then we can establish a session and look up their roles and relationships that they have with the institution in Banner, which is our student information system. So we're able to load all of those roles and all of those permissions into the session, and then once it's there, we're able to tailor that content or fetch the appropriate stuff from various back-end systems. And we're able to create a fairly robust, and I'm quickly clicking through things, hoping I could find, I thought I had my Plymouth open still. Yeah, so you can see, I'm seeing my email here in the middle, which is obviously tailored just to me, or the announcements that are just right here. And those are all tailored and targeted, and even the links down that left-hand sidebar there are all tailored and targeted as well. In fact,
do you build that as like a WordPress widget and then write code that pulls out what kind of user, like how does that, like under the hood?
That's what we should do. It's not what we're currently doing. We made a transition just last spring away from our prior portal platform and into this new platform. And really what we needed to be able to do to make that transition palatable was all of the channels we had created for presentation through that other system we wanted to be able to present through this system. So really what you're looking at on this page is all custom code that knows who you are and what stuff to go fetch for you. It doesn't end up being a lot of code. The complicated stuff is in each of these content modules.
Okay.
Someday I would love to reach a point where, instead of having our own framework for fetching that stuff and managing it in here, we could leverage WordPress more heavily and use its widget infrastructure to do that. But we're not there yet. Well,
yeah,
I'm
guessing if we redo this webinar in a year that you'll be there and you can tell us all how you did it.
Yeah, we just might be.
So we are coming up at the end of our Q&A time, but I wanted to ask you one more question, which is that if you had to do it again, would you still go with WordPress?
Oh, I think almost definitely. There's always, we would definitely analyze what was out there and make sure we were making the right decision. But in general, we're really happy with WordPress, and it's since we chose it, it's only gotten better. And that's probably the most exciting thing I can say. The prior CMS we had, we chose it 3 years later. It really looked like the same animal. We chose WordPress 3 years ago, and the evolution of that product has been much more interesting. And with each release, there's something that we think, oh, this is going to make something we're doing easier. And they feel like really, really applicable and really real tangible upgrades and releases. So, I think we would do an analysis, and I think that WordPress would go very quickly towards the top.
Okay, well, thank you, Zach. We're about to wrap up here. I think we answered all of the questions. There were some great ones there, so thank you, everyone, for joining us today and for all of the questions that you sent us. And certainly feel free to follow up with any of us if you have any further questions. I just want to thank Zach again for joining us, and a big thank you to Lisa as well for leading that Q&A. And we hope that all of you will join us once again for another iFactoryEd webinar. So thank you, and have a great day.